The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Commander Kale of Earth walked through the crystalline doors, carrying something that made every alien diplomat's survival instinct scream in terror. A human infant, Ari, barely 8 months old, gurgled happily in her father's arms, her tiny fingers grasping at the silver insignia on his uniform. To Kale, she was perfect, all soft cheeks and innocent eyes. To the assembled representatives of 47 star systems, she was a nightmare wrapped in pastel fabric. Commander Kyle, the Vrix ambassador, hissed, his scales rippling with barely contained panic. "You brought a juvenile to the council?" Kale adjusted Ari against his shoulder, completely oblivious to the way 3 delegates had already activated their personal shields. "The daycare had an emergency closure." "I apologize for any emergency?" The Theron representative's 4 eyes widened in horror. "Commander, that creature is the emergency." Humans had been part of the galactic community for only 5 years, but their reputation had spread like wildfire through an oxygen-rich atmosphere. They were the Death Worlders, the ones who evolved on a planet that actively tried to kill them daily. They ate poison for pleasure, kept predators as companions, and considered falling from great heights a recreational activity. But their young were something else entirely. "Please, everyone, calm down," Kale said, bouncing Ari gently. She cooed, the sound making the Xanthari diplomat clutch his chest in fear. "She's just a baby." "Just a baby," the Vrix ambassador repeated, his voice climbing an octave. "Commander, do you have any idea what you've brought into this chamber? That infant is an apex predator in its most vulnerable and therefore most dangerous developmental stage." Kyle frowned. "Dangerous? Ari couldn't hurt anyone. Look at her." Ari chose that moment to smile, revealing 2 tiny teeth. The Theron representative fainted. "Those are weapons," someone whispered from the back of the chamber, growing weapons inside its mouth. "They're baby teeth," Kyle protested. "Every human has them." "Exactly." The Xanthari diplomat was now standing on his chair. "You're born armed. What kind of evolutionary hellscape requires a species to develop defensive weapons before they can even walk?" Kale opened his mouth to respond, but Ari squirmed in his arms, reaching toward the holographic display at the center of the room. Her small hand passed through the light projection of a nearby star system, and she laughed. A bright, delighted sound that echoed through the chamber. It was a sound that, on Earth, would make any parent's heart swell with joy. In the Galactic Council, it triggered 17 emergency evacuation protocols. "It's vocalizing," the Vrix ambassador shrieked. "Displaying territorial dominance." "She's laughing," Kyle said, exasperation creeping into his voice. "Because she likes the pretty lights." "Likes?" The Xanthari's translator struggled with the concept. "It experiences positive emotions while surrounded by unknown entities in an unfamiliar environment." "Where is its survival instinct? Where is its fear?" Kyle looked down at Ari, who was now trying to grab her own feet with intense concentration. "Human babies are curious. They explore. They explore," the Vrix ambassador repeated slowly. "You let them investigate potential threats. Voluntarily? How else would they learn?" The chamber erupted in chaos. Half the delegates were arguing about the psychological implications of fearless juveniles. The other half were updating their system's defense protocols. Through it all, Ari remained blissfully unaware of the panic she'd caused. She grabbed at her father's finger, holding on with surprising strength, and looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. "Papa," she babbled. The universe stopped. Every argument died mid-sentence. Every alien froze. Even the environmental systems seemed to pause, the gentle hum of air circulation falling away into absolute silence. Ari, delighted by the new game, repeated herself. "Papa!" Kale's face split into the widest smile. "Did you hear that?" She said Papa. That's her first word. But the delegates weren't celebrating this developmental milestone. They were experiencing something close to existential horror. "It bonded," the Xanthari whispered. "The apex predator has formed an attachment." "That's not possible," the Vrix ambassador said weakly. "Death World predators don't bond. They compete, they dominate, they establish hierarchy through combat. Humans aren't like that," Kale interrupted, pressing a gentle kiss to Ari's forehead. "We're pack animals. We protect our young. We die for them. Die for them." The concept seemed to break something in the Theron translator, which emitted a sound like grinding gears. You would sacrifice your own survival for a juvenile that cannot even contribute to the group's welfare. Of course, Kale said simply. She's my daughter. Ari yawned, tiny fists rubbing at her eyes. Within seconds, she was asleep against her father's chest. Completely vulnerable and utterly trusting, the delegate stared. Here was an infant apex, predator, from a world that forged its inhabitants in storms and predators and geological chaos, sleeping peacefully in the arms of an adult who would face down an entire fleet to protect her, a baby who smiled at strangers and laughed at lights and said "Papa" like it was the most important word in any language. The Vrix ambassador slowly lowered himself back into his seat. We have misunderstood everything about humans. What do you mean? Kale asked. We thought your strength was in your ability to endure, to survive, to overcome. The ambassador's scales had shifted to a color that indicated deep contemplation. But that's not it at all, is it? Kyle looked down at Ari's sleeping face. No. Our strength is in what we endure for. The session was quietly adjourned. As Kale carried his daughter out of the chamber, the delegates remained in their seats, each grappling with a new and terrifying revelation. Humanity wasn't dangerous because they were apex predators. They were dangerous because apex predators loved.